I checked just before the meeting, Your Worship, and I received no email from Roxanne.
Sorry, I have received nothing as well. Marcy, to the microphone. And there's a little button to press. It'll turn red if you're ready to speak.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Marcy. Well, my proper name is Marcia Burtniak, Burtniak. I have been a resident of Strathmore since 2001, and I'm going to speak to the Declaration of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I know that goes with the information that's related to the cemetery. Okay? And so I'm going to acknowledge my husband's First Nation of Siksika, and I'm going to give you my Blackfoot name in Blackfoot. So I'll greet you, Oki, Mistawanakok Makoyapani. So I was given that name by an elder, and it means beautiful wolf eyes. So reading this declaration, I'm just kind of curious as to why this came to be, and I'm also curious as to the wording and how did this come to be, please?
Sorry, you're asking about the actual declaration,
Yes.
the wording?
Yes.
It came to council last year, I believe. We had a discussion on it.
Okay. Is this related to the cemetery bylaw?
Yes, it is. It
Okay,
is.
if you could draw that correlation for council, please.
Who are you, please?
I'm the town manager, the chief administrative officer.
Okay.
Just please explain how you're relating the declaration to the cemetery bylaw, because,
I'm getting to
yeah,
that, thank you.
thank you.
So you're asking how we came to have a declaration?
Yes.
It came before council. We discussed it.
Mayor, if I may, I would remind council and the delegation, this is statements to council. It's not asking questions of council.
Okay, thank you for that reminder.
And
So,
pardon me, what did you just say?
This is about making statements to council. It's not asking questions of council. So please make your statements
So
tonight.
if this is democratic process, am I not able to ask a question?
well, I think the rule is for the public comments, we allow you to speak on the issue, the item on the agenda, but not necessarily question us as to how we made our decisions. It was done in a public meeting, I can tell you that. There was a vote on it from council. So if you could make your statements about the cemetery bylaw, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, but I'm just looking at the wording here, and I'm not really sure who speaks this way. Is this posted anywhere in the community so that people can actually look at the wording and really get a good definition as to what this means for the community?
Well, I believe it has been on our town website. Again, you're asking us questions, but this is for public statement on the cemetery bylaw that's come forward after meeting with the public for many times. It's had several amendments. The cemetery bylaw is now coming to us again tonight. So the declaration that deals with diversity, inclusion, and equity, it has been posted, I imagine, but it was done a year ago. We voted on it.
No, that's not what I asked. I asked.
Well, again, you're not here to ask us questions, and you can get upset about democracy, but you're here, and we're allowing you to speak on the subject at hand, which is the item that deals with the cemetery bylaw and the potential amendments that have been presented at past meetings. We've had several meetings where the public has come in, and from those and from our counselors' work, we have had amendments come forward, several amendments. So that's what we're dealing with tonight, the cemetery bylaw and potential amendments.
Okay, but all I'm saying is the wording here basically says that as residents and visitors, we are taking a look at diversity, and with that, there should be, from what I can read here, that there is richness in difference of all the people who are present as citizens here and our neighbors, correct?
Again, you don't have to question me, but you're much better there as far as staying on the subject that you feel that diversity, inclusion, and equity are definitely, and what I'm getting from you so far is that you feel it's tied into the cemetery bylaw.
It is, because if everyone in the community is valued and each person finds a home here, then I think we need to respect what is taking place with the cemetery. Now, I've read very, very clearly the different sections, and the one that I believe makes me quite irritated is the piece about not being able to be laid to rest by your family members. So is there not something that says, wait, let me find it, because I've, 11, sorry? Okay.
Well, again, these are statements, and if you're going to ask us questions about the bylaw comes up later on. It'll be presented, but this is just statements on the bylaw that have, the bylaw is coming tonight. This is public comments for you to make statements on the bylaw.
Okay. Section 10 point.
And our time is up for you. We've gone past 5 minutes. The ruling is each person has 5 minutes to speak. And again, we've had these meetings 4 times at least now. And now we have this latest one with the amendments coming forward. We're supposed to be just talking about the cemetery bylaw.
Okay, well.
And you spent a lot of your time questioning us about the declaration regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, where it came from, why, how do we decide on it, how was it voted on? That ate up a lot of your 5 minutes. And we have other people that need to speak. I don't want to be rude about this, but there's a procedure to follow because we have so many items that have to be dealt with tonight. And again, this is at least the 4th time we've dealt with this cemetery bylaw. So would you be able to make a concluding statement as far as your thoughts on the cemetery bylaw?
I don't agree with it, and I believe that each member of the community, whether you are from this community or not, you should be able to decorate your family's plot with dignity, and I do not believe that there should be anything that should change that. I also believe that it's quite cruel, it's intolerable, and I'm not sure who has made these amendments, and I guess I'm not going to ask anything more, but I support Karen 100%, and if she is charged, I will stand with her, and if you need charging me, then that's fine. Thank you.
I'm not sure where you got the idea that charges were going to be laid. I would also like to point out that the bylaw itself does not deter people from bringing things to the cemetery. It just puts more rulings in place, more order in place. So there's nothing in this bylaw that says you can never bring anything to the cemetery. I'm not sure where that came from. We move now to Jaden Molina. Good evening, and Jaden, it's nice to see you again. I'm hoping you have some new information. There's some new things you'd like to say. Each person has 5 minutes to speak, and I don't want you to be distracted or startled when the bell goes. That's just to give you a minute of time that you have left.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everyone. My name is Jaden, and I spoke in the November 3rd, 2023 council meeting to my concerns about the proposed cemetery bylaw. My address is 135 Strathmore Lakes Bend, and I would just want to talk about the bylaw. Now, I didn't realize that there was new amended bylaws of 2024. I am going off of the bylaws of 2023, the proposed bylaws. So please note that my information may be incorrect, but I would still like to bring
Sorry,
forward-
Jaden, I just want to reassure you that the bylaw coming tonight has some amendments, so that's
Yes,
that.
yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so you're good.
So I just wanted to let you guys know that I do appreciate the amendments of the new bylaw. I did have a 5-minute chance to read through them. But I would like to offer up more ideas, if possible. So over this past year, my grandfather was blessed with 2 new knees. He is now the Bionicle Man. Unfortunately, he still can't knee, and on the first day that the doctor allowed him to visit my grandma, he went running. He did come back to the house, and he was so extremely grateful that he was able to sit on the bench that allowed him to have a comfortable conversation with her. And that is why we decided to lay my grandma to rest in this location. So like I said, I didn't read through I didn't inspect through the bylaws that are being proposed now, but I would like to ask that all of the graves get grandfathered in now. And that is one of the new proposed, not one of the new proposed bylaws. And I would also like to comment on Donna's comment about relocating the benches to a small circle. That is something that I appreciate. This demonstrates that she is showing dedication to trying to find a practical solution within this bylaw proposal. In my opinion, if you prefer to approach it this way, the town should be responsible for supplying the benches, and in order to determine an ideal spot for the benches, the town should work together with the people who spend the most time there and willing to give up their time to find a perfect place for those benches. Furthermore, I'd like to also express my dissatisfaction with this solution only for the primary reason that our appreciation for having the bench in front of my grandmother's headstone is to provide a place for my grandfather to sit and be in her presence directly. I also wanted to state that I understand that the solar lights can present difficulty for the town in terms of the upkeep and relocation. In addition to that, I do bring up my permit idea of having the people who would like to put things there pay for a permit. And the other option is to coordinate with the permit holders a designated particular week every month to remove the solar lights so the town can conduct the necessary maintenance during that time frame. And then within that week, they'll be able to put back their solar lights or planters or things like that. This plan would enable the operations team to conduct a necessary maintenance within that time frame. And however, this could be an option to install lights directly on the grave. And I would like it to be known that we would gladly donate 50 solar lights if warranted. With this in mind, I urge you to take in the consideration of my grandpa's welfare, our family, and the multiple other individuals who are constantly present while discussing this bylaw. Kindly note to ensure the satisfaction of all individuals concerned with this proposed bylaw, we are open to cooperating with the town of Strathmore, and we can only hope that the town of Strathmore is open to cooperating with its residents. I would like to extend my thanks to the council for taking the time to consider my request today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. Brenda Knight. Yes.
Do you need me to tell you who I am? I'm Brenda Knight. Just a couple of things. Let me get my thoughts now. Anyways, the ribbons, I guess. The ribbons and the different sections of the cemetery. My understanding is that some of these things are going to apply differently than what it is to the old section of the cemetery. And I'm hoping that that is going to stay. I don't agree with the Central Park location of benches and all that good stuff. I just think that I'm having a hard time realizing that the town is taking so much interest now, considering over the last few years I've known the people that have taken interest in the cemetery, and it hasn't been the town other than just straight mowing. And I'm hoping that everybody can move forward from this. And I also want to thank you for not returning my calls, because I also asked about the Friends of the Cemetery. I've given you a couple of phone calls with regards to starting the Friends of the Cemetery, so that maybe some of these things could be addressed without having to do through the town. I would like to do the Friends of the Cemetery, raise some funds so that it wasn't on the taxpayers' dollar, and then do some work in the cemetery that we could do just as volunteers. And I think you'd find it easier on the town staff and easier on people. And I think people will rotate through it. It's not a permanent thing, like you're not going to be on this committee forever, but I think people will rotate through it and help when it is time when people grieve, right? So that's all. And I just have a question. I know I'm not supposed to ask a question, but is there a time after this time that I can ask council questions on other matters?
Well, we have a time period at the start here where you can talk about items on the agenda,
Yeah, this isn't on the agenda. I just have a question.
about something that's not on tonight's agenda.
No, it wouldn't be on the agenda. So is there something else I can ask at the end of the meeting then?
Kevin, Kara?
Would you like to work with our office to schedule as a delegation for a future meeting?
No, I just want to ask, for some information, that's all. I can do it right now.
So council has the authority to develop and administer bylaws. Council operates under a procedure bylaw, which is consistent with most municipalities in Alberta. They're not different. The procedure bylaw outlaws how the meetings are conducted, and that's what we're trying to explain tonight. So in the procedure bylaw, if you want to speak to something that is not on the agenda, you do a delegation. That is a bylaw. That is the law that this council and councils before it have
Would it
developed.
help if you shot me an email and I can answer it in an email?
No,
Or a text?
no, it's fine.
Okay.
I just have one question to ask, and I need a document, that's all right, another day. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Are there other people in the gallery who would like to say something, make comments tonight? You can put your hand up and come forward. Okay, seeing none, we'll carry on to item 6, delegations. We have 6.1, Karen and Doug Van Vertigem. And for a delegation, just want to go through this. Members of the public and community organizations are welcome to attend a regular council meeting as a delegation to present an item to council for consideration. And obviously you can fill out a delegation request and submit it to us. So tonight we have Karen and Doug Van Vertigem. And for delegations, you have 10-minute presentation time, and then there could be questions or comments from council. And I believe, for those of you who haven't been here, we have heard from Doug and Karen in the past. So we've also received an email as well as photos from them as in our town emails.
Good evening, council members. I'm Karen Van Vertigum. This is my husband Doug. We reside in the county of Wheatland, but we also have our address, Box 2472, Strathmore. Try to make this brief as possible, but at any rate, some of this pertains to the old bylaws. And again, like Jaden said, unaware of the new bylaw amendments, so bear with me. My notes from November 2nd, 2023 meeting regarding the proposed cemetery bylaws and a response to the most recent meeting on Wednesday, May 8th. I'd like to share on behalf of my family as well as others who have voiced concern over this new proposed bylaws. I want to begin by restating what I said at the meeting back in November, where I addressed both the current and proposed cemetery bylaws. Section 13.12 of the proposed bylaw states that there will be no items left at plots, including benches, the purchase of which is to pray the rosary, which takes 20 to 30 minutes, or the Stations of the Cross for the Holy Souls of Purgatory, which takes about 40 minutes. Again, we reside in the Strathmore Catholic portion of the cemetery. So standing or sitting on the ground would be hard for people with mobility issues, let alone a regular person. Moreover, I cannot understate how important this is to people of faith. The repetition of the rosary is meant to lead mourners into peaceful and thoughtful prayer and helps them to enter the silence of their hearts where Christ's Spirit dwells. These prayers bring solace and comfort to the family of the deceased, knowing they are helping their loved ones enter heaven. So for Roman Catholics like myself, but also for other religions and spirituality, this connection to the dead and the hope that we can help our deceased loved ones wherever they are is so deeply meaningful for us, and it is for our religious right to be allowed to do so, hence the bench issue. So many people place mementos such as statues, pictures, and crosses and solar lights. So also if someone was allowed to care for their departed loved one, it would not be a maintenance issue. The cemetery is a place for families and friends to reflect on the lives of the deceased and the personal impact the deceased made upon their own life. Visiting the gravesite is done with respect and honor, demonstrating a peaceful, respectful spirit, demonstrating a respectful, peaceful spirit. It is appropriate to bring flowers or wreath to adorn the gravesite, and minor housekeeping tasks like discarding trash or cleaning or weeding around the gravestone are ways to show respect for the deceased and family. The one who visits the cemetery is preserving the memory of the deceased for all who will visit at later times. Furthermore, the existing headstones run both north and south, as I've mentioned before, and east and west, and many also have the cement covers, which will be an amendment going forward, I understand. So these factors already interfere with the town's maintenance workers' ability to mow in the straight lines. So according to section 13.11, no one is allowed to walk on plots and pathways, which I've mentioned before, which there aren't any. So if solar lights are on a plot, it's not a safety concern, as no one's to walk on the plots regardless. Section 7.1 states there will be no planting, and sections 13.15 and 14.2 state you may not cultivate or care for a plot or face a fine upwards of $10,000. So over the years, I've witnessed the following issues, which is all over town with the major gopher infestations, where workers in the town were upset because they were eating all of their flowers and digging on the plots, caved-in graves and toppled headstones, the dandelion infestation, and withered and sparsely planted grass and weeds over a foot tall, roads that have been impassable for weeks at a time in the winter. I would also like to add that for many, the planting of flowers and caring for departed loved ones is a cultural belief, including but notwithstanding the Philippines, Mexico, Portugal, Ukraine, and Lithuania, to name a few. Many I've met there and hugged and come to know, united in our love and grief. This is what we do for them out of respect and love. Many cultures believe caring for the dead also helps them in the afterlife as well. These restrictions are like saying that your neighbor's yard is unkempt, unwatered, and uncared for with no flowers or decor, so you should not be allowed to care for yours. Section 11.1 states that visiting hours, which we brought into effect, and I think you've explained it, Kevin, in the past, about as long as there's no problems, I guess. Most tragic of all is section 10.1, which states there will be no choice of a burial plot location. So for those who have lost a partner or a child, this thought is devastating and distressing. We want to be with our person in death as in life. This is very detrimental to a person's mental health. My suggestion that could address worries about the presence of decor at some grave sites would be to have a biannual public cemetery cleanup to remove the broken and/or otherwise disagreeable items from their families. Additionally, maybe there could be a community Christmas tree there so that visitors to the cemetery could contribute to it if they so desire, as in like the hospital does, maybe a tree of hope or whatnot. So everybody's not trying, and I know it's been an issue with people bringing trees and whatnot in. If we had a communal one, perhaps people could. You understand my point? Okay. Furthermore, I would like to express my thoughts about the last meeting in May. We walked into the meeting at 5:50 as we were told that the meeting started at 6 p.m. Much to our chagrin, the meeting had already begun, and up on the big screen were pictures of our son's grave and his grandparents. So this kind of confirmed to us that their graves are the catalyst behind some of the new regulations that were presented. Also noted that early spring pictures were taken and not the peak season, when many people have come to us remarking how beautiful the graves looked and what an inspiration it was to care for their own family members. Also noted that there were no pictures shown of gravel piles everywhere, which were suddenly cleaned 2 days before the cemetery tour with town council. There were also potholes from people getting stuck in the winter, which remained 3 years later. Much of what is going on feels like it's biased against people caring for and beautifying their loved ones' graves. I would like to address the comments from the meeting that were made about the windstorm that happened early May and how many various ornaments adorning the plots could potentially be projectiles. I saw multiple reports in town on those days about trampolines and other large items blowing into other yards those days. Will the town also have to make bylaw changes regarding what people may or may not have in their own yards, so this doesn't take place in other areas of town as well? I'm being certain that being hit by a trampoline would cause more bodily injury than a wreath in a cemetery. Personally, I wire our wreaths onto a wreath stake, and not one item was missing that day from our family's graves. Nothing. Regarding Donna's suggestion of moving all the benches into a specific circle, it is ableist to assume everyone is capable of standing graveside for extended periods of time, especially while praying. This is prejudice against religious practices. Understood, a bench should be structurally sound and not in the middle of everything, as she mentioned a bench was. The bench referred to was moved by the town when they were moving and was initially placed at the gravesite of a young woman by her parents, as I have seen them there many times over the years. Speaking on the bench that we placed at the cemetery personally, it is made of granite and is used by us and multiple elderly incapacitated family members, as it is a family area. Also, it's been brought to our attention that many young people go sit there and visit our son when they are struggling mentally. By the way, September is also the month that we recognize people with suicide. It is my belief that planting annual flowers at a memorial spot perched at a nursery should not be a huge concern. The ancient Romans laid down flowers and other mementos at the site of tombs because they believed the spirits of those who passed remained in the area of the gravesite. Continuing to decorate these graves was a way to show the spirits they were remembered and honored. Other ancient cultures used flowers in death rituals to symbolize the cycles of life and death. It is reasonable that planting flowers and invasive perennials would be ecologically detrimental and therefore not acceptable. So this also ties into a permit that Councillor Wiley had mentioned at the last meeting, and Jaden has also mentioned. One of the biggest issues is the pre-purchase of a burial location on the guarantee of your spot of preference. I'm sorry, I'll try to wrap this up. Imagine separating a husband and wife or their parents from their children and the effect mentally you are placing upon such people. And the only other way is to place a headstone ahead of time, and many simply can't afford to do this. I'm gonna actually, because I'm running out of time, skip ahead to the amendments. So I'll go to 5.12, which I don't have them on me here. They're at my seat. Can you grab them? anyways, do you have 5.12 in front of you? So in reference to this, the cemetery coordinator will have charge and be responsible for the approval of benches, trees, and planters placed in the cemetery. So my issue with this is, what if said cemetery coordinator has a bias against someone? What if she just simply says no because whatever reason? Then what's your recourse? And this isn't a question, it's a rhetorical question. Section 8.12, can we please add benches that are existing to be grandfathered in if they are already made of sturdy
I just want to
materials?
stop you for a moment. And I believe that it's okay to make your comments, and I've read your email, but when you make a comment about a staff member and you're saying that that person is demonstrating bias.
I'm not accusing anyone of bias, I'm saying,
you-
what
you
if they
said it-
have bias?
You said it was a rhetorical question, and it sounded very much like you were making.
I wasn't meaning it as a question, Mr. Fuel.
It sounded like a statement then.
My apologies, because that was not my intent.
Okay, if you'd like to carry on then and conclude.
Moving on to 8.12, can we please add benches that are existing to be grandfathered in if they are already made of sturdy materials? So any existing benches that are of sound materials, I ask that we amend that into 8.12. On section 11.4, I'd like to ask that be amended as well, taking into account for spouses and parents of children that have lost. I feel allowances for these people should be made. On to 12.13 and 12.2 to 12.22. It basically says no one is allowed to plant flowers, grass, etc., and only planters are to be allowed through the memorial bench/tree purchasing policy of 5.14, which doesn't exist as yet. So planters tend to blow away in our windy province, and I have personally put planters back on graves known to me weekly. So for me, I find that's not a great thing. It might be, but also with our drought conditions and heat, planters will die much easier than planting if you do. Most people aren't going to plant anything anyway, honestly. Please refer to all the baskets along Main Street and understood we're under a water restriction right now, so that's not an accusation. It's just with the water restriction, this becomes an issue as well. And between what section 12.22 says one may care for plots with permission. So I just find it a little contradictory between 12.20 and 2.21 and 12.22. There's a little confusion around that. So can a person obtain a permit on a yearly basis from the cemetery coordinator, which shows intent to care for the plots of our loved ones? So, and if it isn't cared for properly, then perhaps give a warning before the said permit is revoked. So I think it would show a statement of intent to care for that person's grave. And finally, I'm begging you to allow not just us, but for other people that care for their loved ones to be allowed to continue to do so, and to please take into consideration with the benches and the burial spots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We move now to item 7, the consent agenda. Are there any items on this consent agenda that councillors would like to see removed and dealt with separately in the public meeting? Seeing and hearing none, I'm looking for a motion concerning this. Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I would move that council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports by an omnibus motion. 8.1, regular council meeting minutes of July 17th, 2024. 9.1, council meeting schedule amendments, budget meetings. 9.2, corporate strategic plan and financial plan quarterly report, Q2, 2024. 9.3, local government fiscal framework memorandums of understanding. 9.4, 2024, FCSS Advisory Board Family and Community Services Grant Program. 9.5, Canada Community Building Fund Memorandum of Agreement. 9.6, intermunicipal development plan, bylaw number 24-15, scheduling a public hearing. And 12.1, a thank you letter from the Vault Cultural Collective Society.
Thank you for that motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We move now to item 10, bylaws. 10.1, cemetery bylaw number 24-21. Donna, you're coming up. And before you come up, Donna, I have been listening to a lot of the things, and I've been reading the emails from the Van Vertigums. I've met with them individually as well. I think I have a motion that could go a long way into improving things. And if I could turn the chair over to Deputy Mayor Wiley so I can put a motion on the floor, and then we can discuss that motion. Deputy Mayor?
All right, so I'm not sure the order of things then. Am I calling our?
Well, I'd like to
operations
put a
director?
motion on the floor because it may actually help us, and we may not have to go through a long presentation, the discussion, debate, if the motion is deemed positive by council, and I'm hoping that it could be something good for the gallery here.
Okay.
So I would move that council defer further debate and discussion of bylaw number 24-12 to a future regular council meeting, and that council direct administration to formally solicit interest from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Calgary in acquiring and operating the Catholic section of the Town of Strathmore Cemetery as permitted by the Cemeteries Act, and that council direct administration to include all relevant correspondence and meeting recordings to council's discussions excuse me, of the proposed cemetery bylaw to the Roman Catholic Diocese of Calgary as a representative cross-section of the feedback received from local Catholic Church members regarding how they wish to grieve their loved ones, and that council direct administration to bring a report back to council for further direction upon receiving a response from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Calgary. And if I could speak to the motion, please, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
The reason I'm putting this motion on the floor is that a couple of reasons. One, I can't possibly begin to understand what the Van Vertigums are going through in their grieving process. And I know others have also had this situation, and we will all face it at some point in our lives. And although I was raised Catholic, I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, and I don't fully understand everything that the Catholic grieving people go through, and I want to respect everything that they bring as far as how they grieve their loved ones. So my reason for bringing forward this motion is to allow that diversity and to acknowledge that the Catholic faith, and I know that the Catholic faith is followed in the Philippines and in Europe as well. So basically this allows that diversity and turns back the control of the cemetery portion, that is the Roman Catholic one, to the Roman Catholic parish, and if the diocese goes along with it. I think it would be a great way to respect your faith and to recognize the diversity. And I'm hoping that it'll be seen as a positive motion that can help you all as you continue forward in your spiritual process of grieving and also having your loved ones welcomed into heaven. So that is my purpose for the motion. Thank you.
I just have some comments on the motion. I wasn't aware of this motion getting made tonight, so I didn't prepare anything, but I think the essence of it is it's asking that we approach the Calgary Diocese to begin operating that section of the cemetery. For the first reason I'm not going to be in favor of this motion is that would never work. The Calgary Diocese won't have any interest in operating our cemetery. The second reason I'm against this motion is that we need a local Strathmore solution. We need a Friends of the Cemetery volunteer group that can do this. And so I have a motion prepared tonight, once I pass the chair back, that I think would address that and allow a group, a grassroots organization to come forward and organize a Friends of the Cemetery. I honestly, I have a lot of good things to say about the new proposed bylaw that's sitting in front of me right now, not the one we looked at 10 months ago. I have a lot of positive things to say about it. I only have 5 small amendments to make to it that I think will settle every comment I've heard here tonight, and then just a couple of other small directions from administration that I think will settle it. So I will not be supporting this motion because I think this is something we could solve tonight. I don't need this to drag on any longer.
If I could respond, Your Worship, I would be willing to accept an amendment to solicit interest from the local Catholic parish as far as acquiring and operating the Catholic section of the town of Strathmore Cemetery. And again, it's to allow the diversity and the different ways that the Catholic faith grieves. It once was the Catholic section of the cemetery. I would just be putting this forward to have it returned to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even support that either. I think the Friends of the Cemetery Act needs to be non-denominational, not connected to any particular faith. And it just needs to be a grassroots voluntary group that can step forward and volunteer to make some changes that the people here tonight are asking for. I don't think it needs to be a huge change. Councillor Langmaid?
Sorry, Councillor Peterson was ahead of me.
My apologies, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. I'm just trying to think back to looking in my notes about Father Cristino when he presented before council, and he did speak to the need for specific practice among Catholics, and so I would support the amendment that Mayor Fuel has brought forward in terms of allowing our Catholic Church to take over control of the Catholic side of the cemetery. They did it for years, and I think too that, you know, when we are trying to move forward on this, we want the next 100 years of this cemetery to be better than the last 100 years, and so I really appreciate Brenda Knight's idea of the Friends of the Cemetery. I think that has enormous merit, and working toward that as well. I don't see why there couldn't be both. And I think they're two separate things. I think that there could be representation on a Friends of the Cemetery on the Catholic cemetery and on the rest of the cemetery. And having a non-denominational group overseeing some of that would be wonderful, because I think in time you're going to be approached by other faith communities as our Indochina population grows and our Muslim population grows. I think we'll see other requests coming forward, and so, you know, as Ms. Burtniak pointed out, you know, it is an attempt to be inclusive with everyone. So I think the mayor's motion is something that I would very much like to reach out to this Catholic Church to see if this isn't something that they would like to undertake. Thank you, Your Worship.
As one of the practicing Roman Catholics on council here, there isn't anything in the current proposed amended bylaw sitting in front of me, the one that starts on page 143, that would go against any Catholic teachings. There's a small 5 different amendments in here that I think would meet the needs of the people talking, but I think that I can't speak for the local parish, but I can't imagine that it would want anything to do with taking over this. And so to me, all we're doing right now is just kicking the can further down the road. This summer I was out at Blackfoot Crossing and I went to their cemetery. I was looking for, you know, Chief Crowfoot circa 1877, and I wanted to find his gravesite. And the way that the people there honor their dead is very different than the way that the people in Strathmore do. And so the Friends of the Cemetery would allow whatever group, Indigenous, Catholic, Hindu, to join a non-denominational group and come up with a volunteer group that could do some of the things that that people are asking for. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Worship. I'm interested to explore the mayor's motion further, and I'll explain why. What I see in front of me and who I see visiting our chambers tonight and speaking up in terms of this bylaw is a very loving and dedicated community group who are absolutely dedicated to one another. You're dedicated to your families, and you're dedicated to the area that they rest. I can't think of a better way for that to be managed than by the people who love it most, who care for it most. And that's you. That's the people who are sitting in this gallery tonight. That's the Catholic community here in Strathmore. I don't believe that I should get in your way. If you have beliefs, they should be honored. They should. And that sometimes that can't be accommodated in wording in a document. Sometimes the best way to accommodate that is by the people who believe it most. So I will be supporting this motion tonight. To investigate the possibility, because I can't think of anyone better to manage the area where your loved ones stay than yourselves. Thank you.
So I guess the assumption here is that you guys are all Roman Catholic, and that would be...
Sorry, I thought you were... No. Sorry.
Just, I guess that's the assumption.
My apologies. I thought you arrived as a group, but at the same time, that's wonderful. I am very glad you're here. I apologize for misrepresenting.
If this motion
I
goes
apologize
forward,
for misrepresenting
it's handing over this section of the cemetery to the Roman Catholic diocese. That's what I'm hearing. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing on the proposed amendment that the mayor mentioned would be that it would be the Sacred Heart Church of Strathmore, and that it would be then in the motion addressed to the parish council and CC'd to Father Cristino. And I think that it does move it down the road, as you said, but I think that it also offers an alternative solution that's worth seeking. And I think that, I say that because there's no guarantee that these amendments will pass, and then we'll be back to where we were before. Like, I don't know what the outcome will be of what's upcoming. So I think that it's worthwhile going to our community for that Made in Strathmore solution that we're looking for. And there's nothing precluding that, Friends of the Cemetery. And so to me, this is a movement in the direction of finding that loving compromise that Councillor Langmaid mentioned.
Mayor Fuel?
I would just like to say I'd be willing to accept an amendment to, the motion belongs to the council, but if you're interested in putting an amendment to move away from the Calgary diocese to the Sacred Heart, I'd be willing to accept that, or you could make that amendment.
I just don't think the motion addresses the concerns of the people sitting in front of us. I've heard them say they want better guarantee. They can be buried next to loved ones, maybe just some stronger wording in the bylaw that still allows, obviously, that it can't be guaranteed. They want to have a place where they can worship. That would simply mean that we're grandfathering in benches. We've already addressed the decorations with this new proposed amendment sitting in front of us. I don't see how passing this to one of the parishes in town solves any of the problems that our administration's brought forward or that the delegates in front of us have brought forward. So I will not be supporting this bylaw. Instead, once I pass the chair back to our mayor, I have my own small number of amendments that will address, I think, what's being asked for tonight, that I'm hearing people ask for. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in response, I think that I'm not hearing and have not heard from any other identified faith communities. And I am a practicing Catholic, and practicing would be the germane word. I need a lot of practice. And I think that I would, at this time, like to offer that amendment that Mayor referenced. And the amendment would be that we would remove the reference to the Calgary Catholic Diocese and change that to the Sacred Heart Parish Council with a CC to the presiding priest of Sacred Heart, Father Christina.
Okay, well, this will solve nothing tonight. Mayor Fuel.
Well, I don't really appreciate the editorializing of the motion. I think it could solve a lot of things. And I have been very touched by Jayden and Van Vertigem's, hearing from people who are practicing Catholics. And your comments, Marcia, about diversity, and Karen, your comments about diversity. To me, my motion is just returning the Catholic portion of the cemetery to the Catholic parish so that you folks have autonomy. You folks have decision-making control. You control how you grieve and what you bring to the cemetery. It's giving you independence, and it's returning it to the way it was. So that is my purpose for the motion. Whether it kicks it down the road, it only kicks it down the road, if you want to use that metaphor, to the Catholic parish where maybe it should be and where it was in the past. So that's the purpose for my motion.
Councillor Peterson.
I just want to say, you know, in relevant to both comments on the part of Councillor Wiley and Mayor Fuel, you know, to ask ourselves, why do we have a Catholic cemetery? We have a Catholic cemetery because the practices, as Karen Van Vertigen so eloquently highlighted tonight, are different. And, you know, so everywhere in every community, we have in graveyards Catholic sections of the community. The exception might be Siksika, where there isn't that distinction. And so I think that this is something that is very much worth exploring. And it speaks to the reason of its existence, and it speaks to the capacity and possibilities in the future. And we are putting together a system that needs to work for people for many, many years to come.
I sit on the parish council of the Catholic Church. I'm the vice chair. And I can imagine this being brought to us. We're under-volunteered, we don't have money, and this is gonna go over about as well as a loud fart on a small elevator. But whereas what I'm hearing the people asking in the emails that I'm getting in the conversations I'm having is they're just asking for Friends of the Cemetery, that they can get together as a volunteer group, take care of some of the plots. If there's flowers that have been delivered within 1 week, they can take them out when they start to decay. They can come up with their own rules of order. I was going to ask our administration to help just direct them into coming up with some kind of constitution where they could volunteer and come out. Other than the administration time to get it going, it would cost taxpayers nothing. It's just a Friends of the Cemetery Association. They're totally volunteer run, and they can take care of their loved ones. And it doesn't require anything. It could get solved tonight. Mayor Fuel.
I was just going to add, maybe we could ask our administration as far as the costs to the Sacred Heart Parish. I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't assume because we know what assume stands for, but I'm just thinking that it doesn't have to be a huge price tag for that piece of the cemetery to be turned back to the parish. And again, it's turned back to the Roman Catholics. It's giving you back your autonomy and your control and the way you grieve and the way you bring things to show your love and support for your loved ones. So I don't think it has to be a very expensive cost at all. So I don't know if you can weigh in, and you can't guarantee any kind of a price or anything, CAO Scoble, but it doesn't have to be an onerous cost at all.
CAO?
Through the chair, this is kind of a new item for administration. We'd have to take away and think about that, but I guess I would concur with your comments, Mayor. I wouldn't think it would be an overly expensive or onerous cost to transfer the land.
And for the people here who have loved ones outside of the Catholic cemetery, I don't see how that solves their problems. Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you. I understand that what's been proposed tonight might not solve everything, and it might not be the solution we're looking for. But good government is slow. Good governance takes time. Good governance is boring and frustrating. And that's honestly what this has been for me, is a bit frustrating, because I so much want to make everyone happy, and I am so incapable of doing so. So in service of that, I think it's worth looking at. It's worth looking at all of the possibilities, and if we look at this possibility and this isn't an answer or isn't a solution that can be supported, then that's the answer. And we'll come back and we'll keep on hammering this out together. But I think it's an opportunity that we need to explore. And yes, you're right, Councillor Wiley, it may not solve anything tonight. Passing the bylaw probably isn't going to solve anything tonight either. So I would like to explore this more to see if we can find a solution that maybe works a little better for everyone. Thank you.
Except that I have proposals tonight that I think would satisfy the people in this room. I have a small number of amendments and 2 requests from administration, so I will not be supporting this. I think our normal procedure is before we even call the question, we take a recess where it will give time for Mayor Fuel to send council the motion so that we can all have a chance to read it over before we vote on it. And so I'm just looking for a councillor to call a recess that can give us some time for Mayor to get this written up. Oh, sorry, Councillor Langmaid.
I'm just a little confused. Per procedure bylaw, that's not required. We are required to have the full writing of a bylaw in front of us before we can pass it, which means we would need a recess if we were to move forward with amendments tonight.
So it'd
But
be my
for a regular
preference to have
for a
the
regular
motion.
motion, there is no requirement in our procedure bylaw for
Sure,
that to
no
occur.
requirement. I think it would just be beneficial if we could have the motion sent to us so that we would have a chance to review the motion before we vote on it. So is there any councillor willing to make the motion for a recess so that we can have a minute to look it over? All right, I see no councillor willing to do that. Can the motion be reread? As chair, I'm unable to make the motion for a recess, so I guess we're just going to have it reread.
Okay.
Mayor Fuel?
So my motion states, I move that council defer further debate and discussion of bylaw 24-12 to a future regular council meeting, and that council direct administration to formally solicit interest from the Sacred Heart Parish in Strathmore regarding acquiring and operating the Catholic section of the Town of Strathmore Cemetery as permitted by the Cemeteries Act, and that council direct administration to include all relevant correspondence and meeting recordings to council's discussions of the proposed cemetery bylaw to the Sacred Heart Parish of Strathmore as a representative cross-section of the feedback received from our local Catholic Church members regarding how they wish to grieve their loved ones, and that council direct administration to bring a report back to council for further direction upon receiving a response from Sacred Heart Parish.
All right, the motion's been reread. Is there any comments? All right, I call the question. All in favor? All opposed? The motion is passed. I turn the chair back to Mayor Fuel.
Thank you. And my concluding comments is I hope that the Catholic members of our gallery understand my empathy and my care for what you've said. You've really impacted me as far as the several meetings we've had together. I feel like I've gotten to know some of you better, and I really appreciated my one-on-one meeting with the Van Vertigums. So thank you for your time. We move now to councillor information and inquiries. 11.1 questions between councillors and council statements. Seeing and hearing none, we move to board and committee reports. 11.3 question and answer period. 11.4 administrative inquiries. Do we have any? No. And 11.5 notices of motion. And that brings us to a closed meeting. I'm looking for a motion to go back in camera. Councillor Wegener.
I move that council move in camera to discuss items related to section 24(1)A and 17(1) of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act at 8:12 p.m.
Thank you. Do you need the sections and the letters? That would be awesome. Did you do them? Section 24(1)? Oh, did you do that? And 17(1)? Yeah. Oh, sorry. I must have zoned for a moment. Sorry. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We're now going to a closed meeting in camera.